State House is a big house, or so suggest some pictures emerging out of Kenya's seat of power, where an unlikely meeting, first denied and later accepted as fact, actually took place. Gideon Moi is finally in President Ruto's fold. And I'm being presumptive here. We have pictures from State House. Now, across the border, activist Bob Njagi and Nicholas Oyo are still missing, and the Ugandan authorities are saying they do not have them. We conduct a cross-border lie detector test. Back home, it is a stargazing moment for our youth as the government rolls out the Nyota program. Now, Nyota stands for National Youth Opportunities Towards Advancement. We assess the launch. And the education sector is going through some fresh turbulence as the lecturers' strike enters its fourth week. How will it end? We have that question. Later on our final words, Kai Kai's kicker questions the missing merit in national awards. Sam Sense assesses the gap between the youth and the voter register. On Jamila's memo, it is safer to campaign in eastern Uganda than in Kampala if you're a Kenyan. Just ask CS Murkomen and activist Bob Njagi. On my take, hey Kiambu, this is not a laughing matter. The gang is here, and Bonyo's bone is on a break tonight. Now, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the program. Let's start by talking about the events. Were they today or yesterday? They were actually today, and finally we get confirmation of it today. And this is what I'm talking about. If we can just play those clips on the screen. Perhaps what some would consider an unlikely meeting. These two have not been chums politically for quite some time. And here they are now at State House. That's Gideon Moi from Kano and President William Ruto, who's the party leader of UDA. And of course, this is on the backdrop of, you know, by-elections that are taking place. So first, Sam, set the context for us here. This meeting happening now at a time, why is this important or significant at this point?
Right. Of course, we have a by-election or by-elections on the 27th of November in 24 areas, all the way from MCA to constituency and then Senate. And Senate is the Baringo senatorial by-election, where you're looking for the successor of William Cheptumo, who died early in the year. And of course, just a few days or weeks ago, we heard from the Kano chairperson, Gideon Moi, declaring that he's going to run for the seat. This is a seat that he held up until 2022, representing that county as its senator. And everyone was looking forward to see what sort of a contest would there be, because back in 2022, he was unable to deal with the UDA wave that carried William Cheptumo to the office. Now you have a fairly younger politician nominated to take over. And then just on the eve of presentation of these papers, you hear that there's a meeting going on at State House. I have to say here, I think this is the first time, at least publicly, you are seeing the Kano leadership meeting at State House, because you can see Gideon Moi there. The last time we saw Gideon Moi in State House in a public event or something that was communicated publicly was during the leadership of Uhuru Kenyatta. So for him to appear there and then end up withdrawing from the Baringo senatorial race, because that's what we'll assume, because he didn't present his papers. It is quite shocking because of the build-up that was. And you could see some of the supporters of Kanu party and also Gideon Moi already on the ground waiting for him to come and present his papers. We heard from Masman Kamama, who is a former member of parliament, expressing himself that they're still waiting for him to leave Kabrak and make his way. And there's something that he said, that we are hoping there will be no roadblocks on the way for Gideon Moi, and he'll be allowed to get to, is it Kabarnet?
Mm-hmm. Kabarnet town. Yeah.
Yes, to make the presentation of, you know, there's another Kabarnet in Nairobi.
Yeah,
so
not the gardens.
Yes, not Kabarnet Gardens, but Kabarnet in Baringo. Yeah. So really, So it appears that he's no longer interested in that seat, at least for this season. But it's also not surprising because William Kamket, who is one of the few members of parliament on it's confusing, on KANU party, has been working, what is it, leaders? Has been working with William Ruto's party, UDA. He's been very clear, even saying that it's actually possible to even extend the leadership of William Ruto to 24 years.
And he's a close ally of Gideon Moi.
Exactly, a very close ally of Gideon Moi. He actually suffered a bit during the run-up to 2022 elections, but shortly after the election, he crossed over to go and work with President William Ruto. So looking at this, quite shocking, surprising, but still not surprising, knowing that there has been a lot of undertones, political undertones. Of course, you will see that Baringo elected majority of the seats went to UDA party. So what would it have been if Gideon Moi was to run in this race and win? What would it mean for KANU versus UDA in such a critical election, knowing that Baringo County is important? President William Ruto lost the senator. The spouse of the senator is now cabinet secretary within the government of William Ruto. So what message could it have sent? But also on the question of how politics happen at State House, I think it's quite fascinating, and it's also not the first time that you're seeing this. And even if people may complain that they were left out of that decision, you will remember that a lot of decisions have been made in a meeting with William Ruto without involving the people.
Yeah.
Excuse me. Shortly after the general election in 2022, the UDM party was in Azimio and very quickly shifted allegiance and decided to work with William Ruto. The leader of that party, I think, is Ali Roba, the senator of Mandera. Around that time, David Ochieng, who leads the MDG party as a sole member of parliament, moved very quickly to work with the leadership of William Ruto. Now, shortly after that, perhaps a year later, you'll find, not even a year, it's about 6 or so months, you saw a conversation starting to happen between William Ruto and Raila Odinga. And eventually a decision was made to work with Raila Odinga, William Ruto and Raila Odinga back in 2024. It is not a meeting that necessarily involved everyone. The people came at the end after saying that they brought me some papers and I told them that I have to go and consult the people. That was early this year. Also, the meeting in Ishaweri of Uhuru Kenyatta and William Ruto, there are no consultations of members of the Jubilee Party. You just see the meeting, then thereafter you see the action taking place. So we hope to see what then this means for Gideon Moi, but also KANU. I would imagine there's some very interesting things that we should be seeing in the coming days and weeks.
And like you talk about the idea of consultation, of course, there was a bit of hostility on the ground because there were Gideon Moi's supporters who were ready to stand by him. But Jamila, his supporters were not the only ones who were seemingly blindsided by this move.
In fact, the question is, was this a Gideon Moi decision or a KANU decision? And it's clearly looking like it was a Gideon Moi decision. I'm saying that because of a post on social media by one of the members of parliament from KANU, Naisula Lesuda from Samburu, who actually is talking about how she says, my only concern, and of many who have believed in you and the party, is your choice not to give direction and not to communicate on time of your decisions. We feel not listened to, not heard or felt, especially the felt part. Chairman, address your supporters of your decision, lead with empathy, and carry us along. That's a political leader.
Yeah.
But you've mentioned how the people also themselves, and it was really chaotic today, because there were hundreds of supporters who were actually waiting for him at the Kabarnet airstrip in their borders. And some of the things they're saying, no Gideon, no elections. So to them, what you mentioned, Gituku, that he should not be blocked from getting there. There was that thought that huenda kakatazwa. One, is it because Gideon Moi is really, really a threat to the UDA candidate in Baringo? Because it's very important for the UDA candidate to win in Baringo. Because hiyo ni backyard, the president. So was Gideon Moi really a threat? Because he had clearly announced that he was going to run. There were posters, there were banners in Baringo announcing that he was running for this seat. And people were expecting him to present his papers. Those distraught supporters who were there, they had gathered in anticipation. They were ready to escort him. It was going to be this whole spectacle of him being escorted by his supporters in borders. There was a whole convoy to take him to present his papers. But then now, for them, they did not know about this other intrigues of a meeting between him and the president and leading to him deciding to withdraw. Because for them, they were worried, anaweza kuwa amezuiwa. Why? Because he's probably a threat. And then what happens again? the anger now is directed towards the UDA candidate, Vincent Chemite, who was going to present his nomination papers. He actually had to be airlifted by chopper for 2 kilometers, for a 2-kilometer journey to the IBC offices. And then apparently the aircraft was pelted with stones. There was a story that was done by Emmanuel To. Several vehicles were vandalized. I think we are seeing them on air, and there was a whole melee. So the whole thing was, why is Gideon Moi not presenting his papers? Yeah. For them, it was nothing to do with his meeting with President Moi. For them, it was all about Pengine Anazuio to present his papers. Yeah. We want him to run. Maybe he has a chance to win. So all these political intrigues, really, Yvonne, makes me wonder how, as voters, who are tunapangiwa in boardrooms, in meetings. I know Gituku is going to talk a bit more about that in his final word, but we're not actually being given a chance to decide for ourselves, right? Because imepangwa kule, aka withdraw dakika ya mwisho, his supporters are upset. For them, their reasons were very different from what eventually we are seeing, but now it seems this was a Gideon Moi decision, not a Kanu decision. Yeah, and the question as to whether this was a personal decision or a party decision, and perhaps one that's taken as a prominent member of the party. What does this mean significantly? Maybe looking at the bigger picture of two people who have not seen eye to eye. It is public knowledge that the president did not see eye to eye with former President Moi, and of course with the son thereafter. Are we reading too much into this meeting? What could it portend? Is it a final thawing of relations between the two? Or what would you say about this meeting today and the significance of it, considering the history that these two gentlemen have had?
It's Moi Day tomorrow.
Mazingira.
Yeah. Oh, it's Mazingira Day.
Mazingira. Also, the age is showing, but that's fine. Yeah. For those of us who know it is Moi Day, a certain age bracket. But yeah, nice one. Well
and this is a significant moment, especially for the relations, and you rightly put it there, relations between President Ruto and the Moi family. Towards the end of his life, we had a lot of stories about the broken relations between the former president and the current president. There were suggestions even that he tried to visit him, and he was not granted audience. Yet this president actually owes his beginnings, his political career, to former President Daniel Arap Moi, the late Daniel Arap Moi, having started out as a youth activist in the university, and then going on to become a member of the infamous Youth for Kanu 92 group, which campaigned for Moi in 1992, and also had great beginnings in many things, including wealth and all that. Yeah. But this is a moment where we can also talk of possible mending of relations. But I see a lot of politics in it as well. By-elections are taken very seriously by serving governments, because by-elections have sometimes been used, actually have historically been used, to embarrass government. Show that the government is losing popularity, or some new forces are emerging. And so I think President Ruto had to take this race very seriously, for the reasons that some you are painting there. If Gideon Moi ran and actually won the seat, the senatorial seat of Baringo, the optics will not be good for President Ruto. And you can see a similar amount of effort have been put in other by-elections. You remember Banisa, where the lead candidate suddenly changes sides. Changes sides, because government is trying everything to make sure it wins the by-elections, because by-elections can leave an egg in your political egg in your face. Back, I think, in 1995, there was a famous by-election in Kipipiri. President Moi was then in office, and he had actually thought his party, KANU, would win once in that region that had voted for Dasili. And government put a lot of effort there, including actually sending electricity poles, dropping them on the roads, and promising the people of Kipipiri that there'll be electricity immediately after the election. Mwangi Gideon won that election over the KANU candidate by, of course, a comfortable margin. And the next day, the electricity poles were collected
because
and taken back. Governments take by-elections very seriously because by-elections can be embarrassing. Way back in the 60s, the little general election of 1969, Bildad Kagia, who was President Jomo Kenyatta's constant cause of embarrassment, was up for re-election in Kandara. President Jomo Kenyatta, who rarely traveled, personally went to Kandara to campaign against Bildad Kagia. So for those reasons, you will see that the government will not just invest in the Baringo by-election, but also in these other by-elections. I think at some point we can talk about the Mbere North Ruko's seat, which is also quite a contest, because the one thing governments don't want to see is that kind of embarrassment that comes from by-elections.
Yeah, and you're right. That's why you see he has personally received all of the candidates who've now been cleared by IEBC, personally meeting them at State House to, give encouragement. And I suppose that speaks to that issue. So as we like to say, we wait and see what happens, Sam.
Yeah, I just wanted to point out that if you look at how the president has been dealing with some of these opponents or potential opponents, then you find that he's either a current or a former of some of those political parties. How he dealt with the ODM, he's a former. He says actually he's a founding member of ODM. How he dealt with Jubilee MPs, he is a founder of the Jubilee Party. How he has dealt with DCP candidates who are formerly of UDA. And at the same time, today's, or is it yesterday's meeting at State House was a meeting of the KANU chairman and the former Secretary General of KANU.
Yeah, indeed.
In the name of William Ruto.
That just tells you.
I mean, we read too much into parties, and some I think, when you couldn't place Kamket in, who is my friend, in any party, this is the situation. So I saw somewhere, I think Kenyans are really creative. There was a drawing of a yellow cockerel.
Okay.
Yeah, following that.
Well, that's behind you, or is it behind Jamila? But
it's there in the shot, actually.
Is it there?
Well, it's not quite yellow, but we tried not to. We're a bit
but delicious.
Yes.
Yeah, so President Ruto resigned from the position of Secretary General KANU on the 6th of October, 2007. It's a good anniversary, right?
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
Wow.
Yeah, and tomorrow is Moi Day, as we say. Okay. Yeah, interesting. Now, I want us to talk about something else. There was this event that took place today. Activists from Kenya and Uganda marching to the Ugandan High Commission to petition the Ugandan authorities to produce 2 activists who were abducted, went missing in Uganda a few days ago. Is it now over a week? Bob Njagi and
9 days.
Oyo. Again, here we are. We've witnessed, abductions in Kenya, abductions of Kenyans in Tanzania, and now abductions in Uganda. I think what strikes me and what's difficult about this for me is Bob Njagi has had a rough year. It was just this year that he was abducted for a month. His whereabouts were unknown in Kenya. This cannot be easy. This must be very distressing. Again, they were invited by Bobi Wine to be part of his campaign. They were sighted there and then went missing 9 days ago. Authorities in Uganda say, we don't have him, we don't know where he is. Again, a sad state of affairs with this one, Sam. Just putting East African relations into sharp focus. The election in Uganda is in February. There's an election in Tanzania as well.
End of this month, yes.
This month. But here we are again with another abduction. I cannot imagine what, pain it is for the families. It's one thing to be abducted here and not have, whereabouts known. It's another in in a foreign country, and even though the Foreign Affairs Ministry says they're, in touch with the authorities in Uganda and doing what it takes to try and get these 2 Kenyans back home, it seems like abduction has been the word of the year.
It's extremely sad that we belong to one community, and more than a week later, we're still grappling with, we don't know where he is. I saw the statement from the police service in Uganda of them saying no such a thing has been reported to them. They don't have him. They don't know where he is. And then I wondered, even if that is the correct position according to the police service, what are the authorities doing, knowing too well that there are even images of the last time that Bob and Nicholas were seen, though in the company of Ugandan citizens. And if we are serious about the community that you are in as East African community and the many agencies that we have or the arms that we have, I mean, how serious can it get when you cannot account for a member of, a citizen of this community? And even as the Kenyan authorities continue to inquire, I saw a statement during the funeral of Dalmas Otieno last week in Migori, and I think it was Babu Owino who was calling on the Prime Cabinet Secretary to make a call to President Museveni and talk about Bob Njagi and Nicholas. We don't know whether that has happened, but then it's a very ugly picture that we still call ourselves a community. But then again, you wonder, if Kenyan authorities could do the same to their own citizens, what can our foreign friends do? I remember the case of Boniface Mwangi,
and
who had been in trouble. He has really suffered in the hands of Kenyan authorities, but at the same time now suffered in the hands of the Tanzanian authorities. And even when statements came from there, you don't see a lot of regret or remorse coming from the leadership of the East African community. So one hopes that there can be serious conversations about such kind of things. And when even the presidents meet in the Summit of East African Community, or even the legislative arm meets, you can only hope that there are conversations about what is democracy, what is freedom of movement, what does the articles in our respective constitutions about being held without trial mean, or being presented in court mean. Obviously, knowing too well that all this has been happening at a time that the opposition leader, Kizza Besigye, is in trouble. Is it Tundu Lissu in Tanzania? So what exactly are we doing as East African community with democracy?
Yeah, and Jamila, it's not just Bob Njagi and Nicholas Oyo, for whom it must be distressing and still nothing. But like we're talking about East Africa, Tanzania is also... There's been, a few abductions there as well.
Yeah. The most recent one is former ambassador to Tanzanian ambassador to Cuba, Ambassador Polepole, who was abducted a few years ago. He was appointed by the CCM and he was ambassador in Cuba for a while. But then in the recent months, he's been quite vocal against the president of the presidency and the government of Mama Samia Suluhu, and then suddenly he disappears. His family has been going around police stations. His mother has spoken out. His brother has spoken out, saying that if he's dead, give him to us so we can bury him. Of course, the government has not spoken about this in terms of now where he is. And I think today their family was going to court to try and compel the government to produce him. And even you talk about how this is happening, not just in Uganda and in Tanzania also, even speaking about Oyo and Njagi. Because when you talk about Ambassador Polepole, he's a former ambassador, he's someone who has been in that space. But what would having Njagi and Oyo at a meeting where Bobi Wine is going to present his nomination papers make a difference in the Ugandan elections? Let them come, wafike, wafanye whatever they're doing, and let them leave. And I'll talk a bit more about this in my memo. But we had our CS for Interior, Kipchumba Murkomen, and other colleagues in government across the border to Sebei and campaign for Yoweri Museveni and NRM party. And one of the things that they said was that mupige kura hapa in Uganda for President Museveni, and then in 2027 cross over and come to Kenya and vote for President William Ruto. They went, did their campaigns there for Museveni and came back and nothing happened to them. And Kipchumba Murkomen is the CS who's supposed to be following up and finding out where is Oyo and where is Njagi. And if you ask me, the commitment or the action by the Kenya government so far on this this is almost lackluster. Because I just remember one statement by him saying that we are following up.
Right.
The Ministry of Foreign Affairs is following up.
Yeah.
So what else? Because they've been, I think every single day since they disappeared, we've had maandamano, we've had statements from families, from human rights organizations. Today they went all the way to the Ugandan High Commission to protest about it. It was closed because Uganda is celebrating Independence Day today, but they left a statement. Nothing is being done on this end. These are Kenyans. Whatever the circumstances they're there, these are Kenyans. Bob Njagi and Nicholas Oyo are Kenyans, and we need to do a bit more, try and find out how they are. In Tanzania, we are witnessing that. We've seen Ambassador Pole Pole. Of course, you talk about Tundu Lissu. There was another candidate also who's been kept out of the presidential race. Yeah. And she's been very vocal against anyone who's critical of her. But we're seeing something different in Tanzania, Yvonne, as I finish. There's a bit more now conversations online. And also a few pockets of protests here and there against what is going on, especially with the abductions. Abductions have been a big deal in Kenya. Remember, after last year, abductions, how many people have disappeared, how many have died. We are trying now to form to compensate them. That one is also hanging in the balance because of what we are seeing. But abducting people for just speaking out is a big deal, Yvonne. And you're starting to see those pockets of resistance here and there because of what we're seeing.
Yeah, Linus, do we have enough outrage? Do you feel the outrage of, the disappearance of Bob Njagi and Nicholas Oyo? Sometimes I fear that with every new case of abduction we hear, we get numb to this, and, we shake our heads and tisk, and then we move on. Do we have enough of that pressure, do you think?
No, we don't. We have it at the level of, unfortunately, family. Yeah. Family feels the families and relatives are obviously going through very difficult times. And then the activists have been keeping the message up. You remember they had a demo today to the Ugandan embassy. At official level, quite frankly, it's tongue-in-cheek. We had government saying, we've asked the Ugandan government to tell us where they are. Really? Really? I mean, this is the same administration that did something unthinkable, handing over the leader of official opposition in Uganda. I describe him as such because he's a very senior senior opposition figure. I don't know where the nerves came from in this country that you could actually do that without thinking of the implications, without also thinking of who we are. I mean, Kenya is supposed to be the beacon of democracy in the region. We sometimes, actually many times, think we are ahead of other countries in the region. But we can't be ahead if we can do something as primitive as handing over a leader of opposition of the level of Kizza Besigye to Ugandan authorities. They came here to Riverside Drive. And Ugandan police actually conducted a security operation on Kenyan soil. I think what we are losing is pride. National pride is disappearing, which is why I think in official circles, Bob Njagi and Nicholas Oyo are very small because we are no longer that country that really appreciates what national pride is all about, where we sit in the international affairs. We are growing smaller and smaller. Because as Bob Njagi and Oyo are disappearing in the West, that is in Kampala, our CS Interior is campaigning in the East, conducting a Kenyan-like campaign in the East, Jamila. In the East of Uganda.
So why is he campaigning for the president of another country?
Yes, what are we doing? Yes, it's just that we are starting to really lose some of those things. And there are things that are taught in school, but there's something that is also supposed to be natural wisdom and leadership that has to be exercised in terms of how our nation conducts itself. I think increasingly our neighbors do not respect us. because they think, I mean, if they can collect Kizza Besigye from Riverside, who can they not collect from anywhere? And remember our weak reactions to the arrest of Boniface Mwangi in Tanzania. We are so held back by our internal politics, so much so that you now have, people in government who have allies elsewhere, and they're happy that Uganda is sorting out the opposition internally. That is smallness, and that's really shameful. Yet you can see how the globe is becoming complex. Diplomacy is a game of adults who can see bigger pictures. But we are playing in a really small league. Look around the region. We are having our neighbors that are emerging quite strong. And I'm not talking about Uganda and Tanzania. I'm talking about nations that really know what relations with other nations are about, what national interest looks like, what they need to do for their nations to be strong. I think we can't campaign in Eastern Uganda and have our citizens who are campaigning in Western Uganda arrested because they're not campaigning for the people you are campaigning for in Eastern Uganda.
That's right.
Yeah. Both places are interior, right?
The interior of Uganda, right?
But here's the thing, every life should matter. And it would be important for every Kenyan to feel like, as a citizen of this nation, their country has their back, and whatever they do, wherever, that their government would stand up for them and ensure they get back home. We're not seeing that with them.
And I should just mention that internationally and regionally, there are laws that are used. If you have people that need to be handed over to their country of origin for prosecution, then there are clear extradition processes, legal and even Ochuka, who was a coup plotter, who had conducted a coup attempt here, went through the process in Tanzania.
Right.
Even though Julius Nyerere could just have put him in a pro box, or they didn't exist then, and bring him here. Yeah.
Yeah.
So if we want to hand over Besigye, let's go through the honor of respecting our flag, respecting our boundaries, arrest him with our Kilimani police, not Ugandan police in Riverside.
Take him to court.
Yeah, take him to court. Let the extradition process start, and we hand him over, some national pride, instead of behaving like a thuggish backyard.
And likewise, for Bob Njagi and Nicholas Oyo, if the Ugandan government felt they had no business being there, there is a way to do it.
Yeah.
9 days and still nothing from either the Kenyan authorities or the Ugandan authorities. It's something we'll continue to keep alive here every day until they return home. Now, let's take a break. When we come back, we have lots to talk about happening out on the streets, education, a section of it anyway, higher learning or higher protest, that and much more when we return.